honor it is to bring in a cat who has cemented his legacy in the lexicon of American music as a viable and potent studio player. Being able, his hiring, he was hired and valued because of the fact that he was able to play certain parts of songs with certain types of hooks and licks, and he could play them in all kinds of different settings, funk and blues, and maybe even a little jazz and R&B, and he comes from a long line of a long family lineage of music. Stephen Beckmeier, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege.
No, it's an honor, my friend. I want to read you this quote from one of my interviews with Buzzy, and then you can riff on it. He said, I was a Centerport, Long Island product, which has the dubious distinction of being the site of the only landing by German forces during World War II. Centerport is a harbor town, and in 1942 was the site of a landing by a bunch of German saboteurs who took a boat off a submarine, landed in Centerport, and started asking questions in German of the local residents. Quote, "How do I find the power station?" End quote. They weren't the brightest saboteurs in the world. It didn't take long for the residents of the town to figure out they didn't belong there. That's just sort of an interesting fact, but I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about growing up in Centerport, the kind of music that you were surrounded with, ultimately the culture of that town, and how you and your family fit into it.
Wow, that's a lot. But actually, I grew up in Greenlawn, which is a couple miles further inland.
Dude, I'm a Stony Brook cat.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, no, so I mean, Long Island Railroad stops at Greenlawn, baby. I know that stop.
Yeah. My mom went to Stony Brook when in her late 40s and graduated cum laude from Stony Brook.
Wow. Dude, I love that you...
Anyway,
so Greenlawn, talk about... Dude, Greenlawn in the 60s, man. What was that about?
Just, who knows? I guess Buzz and I were kind of different. There weren't a whole lot of people that were musicians. I mean, we all played in the band in high school and toured around, and Buzz played the French horn. I played trombone. We both ended up in the All New York State band, which performed somewhere, I forget. But yeah, Buzz and I kind of put a band together back then, and I met him in the 7th grade. He tried to steal my girlfriend.
Dude, this is making my year, by the way, dude. Freaking, I don't know if you, I hope you keep in touch with Buzzy, man.
Well, actually, we had a bit of a falling out.
Okay, you know what? All I'm going to say is I hope that whatever it is, we only live once. Closure is important in life, and, I don't know anything about it, but I hope that one day you guys can close that circle, man.
Yeah, I tried a couple times on Facebook and his number, but he doesn't answer. It was a matter of money. Buzz was down on his luck, and I lent him a bunch of money, and he started to pay me back, and then didn't.
Well, I'm sorry to hear
anyway.
that. Yeah, so this is interesting. So you're 7th grade. You started a band, but
no, not till a little later, probably 10th grade, 10th and 11th grade. But that's when I met him, and we became buddies from 7th grade on.
Now I'm curious about this. Was this the band The Reasons Why?
That's right. Yeah.
I need you to talk. So explain. This is so important for younger cats who are going to listen to this long after we've left this planet. Were you guys able to? I mean, was it a battle of the band situation, or were you guys actually playing some kind of? I don't want to say clubs, but it was just such a different time, And I'm curious about how you even got with Amy Records to get these 7 inches and promos.
Well, Buzz's sister was a top model, and so the people involved there are kind of Baptist. We got to record some stuff in New York City. That was sort of right in the beginning. But we did a lot of small venues and basement gigs, one of which we did with Billy Joel. He had a band called the Hassles.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God, this is insane, man.
Yeah, it was, we were teenagers and trying to be like the Beatles, I guess.
Right. I mean, it was, at that point, you weren't playing bone and French horn in that band, though.
No. I was a beginner guitar player. My dad got me an acoustic guitar for Christmas, and I played with Buzz on New Year's Eve. I learned 3 chords, and we did all the songs in the same key.
So so this is amazing. So you, at a certain point, Buzz's sister was kind of in a celebrity form, and that was your connection to this company?
Yeah, we ended up doing some modeling as well in the New York Times Magazine, Mademoiselle.
Are you kidding me, dude? This is unbelievable, dude.
We had some fun. But the guys that organized it all, they took the record money and put it into a film to take to the Cannes Film Festival. They just used us to get money. We didn't make any money or anything, but
I think
the lesson.
Well, first of all, it's the music racket. I actually would just love at that time. Even going back a little bit earlier, in your mind, were you hip at all to the sort of the Hank Ballard and the Midnighters, some of that R&B stuff, or was the first electric music kind of actually the Beatles for you?
Yeah, it was the Beatles. That just, that inspired all of us. I just wanted to write a cool song. In fact, it was the Beatles that taught me about double entendres. I had no idea. I had to go back and reread novels to realize there was more than one level to them. But that's what I learned from the Beatles.
Wow. So you saw them on Ed Sullivan, or was it even...
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We saw them in black and white.
And before that, it was just... Because, there was this thing called the payola scandal, which was like... you had all these kind of...
Yeah.
So then you had like Pat Boone covering... whitewashing a lot of these raunchier R&B tunes. And it's just like, what was were you hip? Was music on your radar then, or was it? And I guess
yeah. I remember as a kid, we used to go down to visit my mom's parents in Atlantic City, down from Long Island, and my brother and I'd be in the back seat, and my father was blaring Frank Sinatra and whatnot. The two of us would harmonize with it.
I love this.
So we got into music rather early, and then my brother Freddie left. He dropped out of high school and went and joined the Butterfield Blues Band with Buzz in New York City. And I wasn't doing anything, but eventually Freddie and I ended up together with the Soul Survivors in Philadelphia.
Well, this is... Well, first of all, I just want to go back to the high school band. Was that you and your brother, Buzz, and who else?
No, it wasn't my brother. It was just me and Buzz and... Danny Horton on lead guitar, because I could only play rhythm.
Right.
And the drummer, Al Stegmaier. Now, Al Stegmaier's brother ended up playing with Billy Joel, and my brother wasn't part of it, but later left and went to New York to play with Buzz and the Butterfield Band.
Even though that company, took advantage of you, are you going to possibly tell me that you heard those songs? Did you get any radio play from those songs?
No, none at all. No, they never came out.
So, could you just talk a little bit about... I remember Buzz... I've done a bunch of interviews with him as recently as a few months ago, and he talked about going in to New York City to a club called The Generation. Eventually became Electric Ladyland Studios, I believe. But can you just talk a little bit about like you when you're in high school? If you did take the Long Island Railroad, if you got into the city, were you going to the Gaslight? Were you going to see folk shows? Were you going to see? I'm just curious about like this is the most amazing time in music history because obviously you had Dylan plugging in and all sorts, psychedelics were legal, and there was just it kind of this wild and it's almost seemed genreless. The music was not categorized the way it is today. I'm just curious about some of the seminal music that you saw, before maybe at or around the time your brother joined Butterfield.
Yeah, well, I wasn't doing much at the time, but yeah, we went in and I can't remember the clubs we went to. We went to see a band called the Thugs.
Yes.
Which was, to me, they were the original rap band in New York City.
They were doing like almost like freestyle rap.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was, to me, I realized later they were probably the first to do that.
Was it, what did you guys go to the Cafe A Go-Go? Were you going down West Village? I'm just curious about the areas of New York that you were hitting up.
I'm trying to think.
It's all right. I know I'm stretching you out. I'm sorry. This is a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. I think it was called the Cheetah. We played at the Cheetah Club.
Cheetah Club. That sounds about right to me.
Yeah, it was probably a very the most popular place in Manhattan at the time. But yeah, I was basically hanging out. I wasn't playing with anybody because I was still learning how to play. And I basically learned from Buzz. I learned his taste in his playing. He's long since gone beyond that. He's a mechanic now. I mean, the guy plays unbelievable stuff. But to me, it was all about what you don't play, about taste.
So I want you to go deeper on this. You're talking more about leaving the head of the tune and an improvisational sense. Less is more.
Yeah, less is more. That's always been what inspired me. I never really wanted to be. I wanted to be a songwriter, but I ended up being a studio guitarist. So
talk. This is so fascinating. When was because I think Buzz went in for a tryout with Elvin Bishop, and then wound up. I don't think he got I think he was playing, going out on bass, trying out on bass, but that didn't work out. But then Elvin recommended him to Butter. What was your, and then your brother joined the band. I don't think I realized your brother was was your brother on the first album?
I don't know if he was on any of the albums. I can't remember.
It's okay. The idea is so you learned from Buzz. You learned taste. You learned, don't be so busy. Less is more. But, then you're in this period of time where it's like, I would love you to talk about that first gig where you had the experience to get on the bandstand, maybe hit some clams, but realize that actually that's the gateway to new musical vocabulary. Where did you learn to get comfortable stretching out in the Stephen Beckmeier fashion?
That's hard to say. It just came naturally to me. I just woodshed a bit and play what you hear, I would hear things and mess around on the guitar till I got it, that kind of thing. So I can't really explain where it comes from or what the procedure is. I just
totally no, I get it. I mean, you consider yourself an ear trained musician, but was there like when your brother hooked up with Butter and you were essentially, just still learning. Was there, before you got into Soul Survivors, I mean, was there gigs on Long Island that My Father's Place, or were you in a band where you were able to get comfortable with your own sound?
No, I actually wasn't. In fact, the first time I ever played lead guitar was with Soul Survivors.
Whoa.
My brother came out to Los Angeles and dragged me back to Philadelphia. And I tell people I spent 2 years one night in Philadelphia. But that's the first time
Wait a minute. Okay, wait. You're just please. I will come back to that. But how you graduated high school?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so then
I went to Hofstra University.
But then you moved to talk about why you moved to LA.
Oh well, we had a band called the Full Moon in Woodstock, and I got hired for some reason to be in this play that was going to perform in Los Angeles. So I ended up going out there. I think it was 1970, and that fell apart pretty quickly. And I just was doing whatever to survive until my brother came out and rescued me, brought me back to Philadelphia.
Dude, I love that. Your brother's always looking at. Wait a minute. This is so. Please paint the picture for me, because one of my favorite albums. I mean, one of my favorite tunes of all time is the Heavy Scuffles on Full Moon. I can't believe. So everybody was up there at that time. Billy Cox was up there. Jimi Hendrix was up there. The Joyous Lake. I mean, can you talk about going to Woodstock and being part of that band? Because I don't think. And was that? I mean, because Dinwiddie and Philip Wilson, they're like my favorite rhythm section of all time.
Yeah, they were great. That was after my time there. Originally, we had Mitch Mitchell from Jimi Hendrix band on drums. and but I was only there for a short time. We played the cafe in town, but after I left, all the rest of the Full Moon unfolded. Neil Larson and whoever else.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Was your brother in that unit?
Yeah, he played bass for them.
But the original was the cafe. It wasn't the Joyous Lake or anything. It was just some sort of coffee house. You played the original Full Moon.
Yeah, I forget what it was called. It was the only cafe in town. It's a very small town. We played there. We did some cover stuff, And
then you go. Then you get hired for the play, and you go out to L.A. And then your brother comes back, and you spent 2 years in. What was your line? In 2 years in one night. In Philly?
2 years, one night in Philadelphia.
Talk about. I mean, just break that down. I mean, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Because to me, like, you want to talk about the soul of American music, and obviously there was, bastions in New York and on the West Coast, but Sigma Sound. Vince Montana and those cats, I mean, they were doing their own thing. And obviously, I just would love you to talk about how that all came about.
Well, I wasn't involved in much more than the Soul Survivors, but there was some players there like Cotton Kent, the keyboard player. He played on a lot of those OJs and Spinners albums and stuff like that. But, the Philly scene was very cool. To me, it was we did Blue Live Soul. In fact, before the album came out officially, it was in a white jacket, so nobody knew who it was, and it got a whole lot of airplay. And then when our white faces were on the album, the airplay fell away because we weren't part of that. The black scene, the Gamble and Huff was the producers. But we were a bunch of white guys doing rhythm and blues.
This is the greatest story. I mean, you're making my year, man. You're telling me that it was a test pressing in a white jacket, and that the stations were rolling this soul funk album out, and people were loving it. And the minute that your white faces appeared, although the cover the cover here indicates a heart on the cover. I mean, you're saying on the back.
Yeah, the pictures on the back. There are, I don't know, 5 or 6 pictures of the band with Neil Larson and my brother on bass and me on guitar. And our pictures were a bunch of white guys, and there went the airplay. I don't know why, but I guess we weren't authentic enough,
Well, I mean, it's also, let's be clear, I mean, there was the reverse of that going on so many times as well. It's just obviously a skin color issue,
Yep, it was divided, I'll tell you. That was like 72, I think, was when we cut that album.
Yeah, I mean, that was what Alvin was talking to me about in one of our interviews, was just the idea that Clive Davis used money to get airplay for black bands that were not allocated for that, and he wound up going to jail for that. It's just I mean, ultimately, you guys were you like kind of obsessed with doo-wop? I mean, can you talk about where the R&B and the soul, or was it just the Greenlawn grease that gave you guys that you were just obsessed with black music?
Well, that came after the Beatles. I realized there was more than the Beatles, and I started listening to Otis Redding and different people, and I realized that's what I liked. That was the heartbeat. So that's what I gravitated to. My brother Freddie actually turned me on to a lot of that stuff. And there was more to life than the Beatles and the Stones. But that's how it started.
You recognized, but only in the aftermath. There was no real knowledge at that time that those iconic British bands, I mean, were completely influenced by black music.
Oh yeah, I discovered that later.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure, absolutely. No, it's really fascinating. At the time, though, it was.
I was playing with Little Richard. That was one of my first gigs, that and Pacific Gas and Electric. And Little Richard had an 18-piece band, and I was the only white guy. And he used me in the show, telling the audience I was the only Mexican in the band. We'll have some tacos for him after the show. It was part of the shtick,
Oh my! Wait a minute. That's how you met Alvin Taylor?
Yep.
So I'm sorry. I mean, if I remember correctly, how did you wind up getting on in that band?
Oh well, I met Alvin, and we went down to a small studio to cut some demos of songs that I was writing.
Wow.
And I went there to pick up a cassette. The engineer was going to do a mix for me. I walked in, and there he was. Engineer Wiley Brooks was playing my songs for Little Richard to sell him the sound of the album. And Richard hired me on the spot.
No way. That is
just out of nowhere. It was just serendipity.
So I'm just trying to get the chronology here. This is after Full Moon, when you had moved to L.A.?
Yep.
So,
yep.
Okay, so you were writing your own material, and then you went on the road. Can you just talk about that band in general? Ultimately, like, did you feel like that you were? To me, there's nothing more intoxicating than that Count Basie band with Freddie Green in it, with that 4-piece rhythm section. And I just wonder about the role that you played with Little Richard. And ultimately, I think the larger question is, did your rhythm chops help? How did that influence your improvisational chops?
Wow. I can't really say. I didn't do much improvisation in Richard's band, but I was glad to have a gig at that point. But I've been the only, as Richard put it, I've been the only Mexican in a lot of different situations.
Dude, you're the only Latin cat, dude.
Yeah, right.
Well, just in retrospect, when you look back on the fact that, early on you're learning three chords, you're playing primarily rhythm. I just going back through my interview with Bobby Womack. I mean, he made a career playing rhythm guitar because he said, I was playing rope-a-dope. Nobody knew where I was going. I wasn't going to try to be like freaking, John McLaughlin or Gabor Szabo or anyone like that. It was, I'm going to keep people on their toes just as a rhythm player. I remember John Abercrombie, he got his gig with Johnny Hammond Smith in New York because he could play rhythm. He could keep time. He could have good time. So I just wonder about like how that allegiance to rhythm playing for Stephen Beckmeier led itself to becoming somebody who could tell a story in a short, concise, radio-friendly tune.
Yeah, well, Womack was one of my heroes.
Oh my God, stone genius, dude.
Yeah, I listened to his playing and picked up on what he was doing. And I ended up playing with Hugh Masekela at some point, but that was right when I learned about Bobby Womack. And I played a lot of rhythm. We had a band called Side Effect, and we played around Canada and L.A. and whatnot, but I got hired for my rhythm licks.
Wait a minute. I know that band. I mean, but that was late. That was later 70s, maybe?
No, that was 72.
Dude, you were thriving in L.A. Your brother didn't come rescue you. You had Little Richard. You were doing the Side Effect. I mean, that's fantastic.
I guess, but
I mean, you weren't living in Beverly Hills, right? I mean, what? But I mean, no, seriously though. I mean, Richard was on the road. I mean, how many days a year? It wasn't like you were sitting around, blues and your breakfast cereal kind of stuff. I mean, you were obviously busy, but the road can eat you alive too.
Yeah, we didn't do a lot of road stuff. I mean, we played Vegas and Tahoe and places like that with Richard. But I wanted to be in a self-contained band. That's why the Soul Survivors was cool for me to go back to Philly. And that's where I learned to play lead guitar because, Neil Larson was in the band, part of Full Moon. He was the keyboard player. And I was embarrassed that I didn't know much about lead guitar, but I did a lot of woodshedding so Larson would like me, I guess. Later on, I went back and started playing with Billy Preston, with Alvin, and I got Larson to come out. I got him a bunch of session work with Frank Wilson, the producer, and that's how I got with Greg Allman. Neil Larson got me on the gig.
It's so tripped. Dude, Beckmeier, do not be modest about this. I mean, so I want to know can you talk to the younger cats? Today we are saturated with visual material. Most cats were autodidacts. You might have been an autodidact, but most of the stuff that you and Buzz and your brother you were auditory. It was an auditory learning society when it came to music. There were maybe 2 or 3 jazz schools. Now everything is codified. Now everything is visual on YouTube, and most of the stuff we're awash in mediocrity. So I'm curious about how because I mean, there's a way to say, oh, I'm embarrassed because Larson's a monster player. I should be better at soloing, but then you wind up, as the British say, wanking it. So how did you learn to really grow and have concise stories to tell? Can you talk about it wasn't like you were busking on the street. How did you grow your chops when you got to Philly?
I can't really say how I did it. I just, I heard it in my head and I made my fingers do it. That's all. It's pretty much that simple.
Right. And
it's all about taste. To me, it was tasteful licks to play. It's like from George Harrison. He played the right part at the right time in the song. It's just fitting in, like a jigsaw puzzle. And like you said, less is more,
I guess more, I'm just fascinated with the idea of when your brother came to get you, what did he say the concept? You guys, was it the idea of saying we're going to be a bunch of white cats trying to play black music?
Nah, he just told me the Soul Survivors were getting together and that he wanted me to come play, And so I did. An interesting story, at that time I was living in a small house behind a house, renting it, and next door was an apartment building, and the guitar player from Bill Withers' band lived there, Bernard Blackman.
Oh.
And he had a 2-track recorder, and I was experimenting with G tuning on the guitar, and I came up with this little ditty, and he had me put it down somewhere in the middle of the tape, and the tape ended up with Earth, Wind, and Fire with other songs from these other people, but my little ditty ended up on that tape, and they used it, and I titled it "I'll Write a Song for You" because Bernard asked me, what's it called? And I just said, hey, I'll write a song for you. And it ended up on their All in All album, I'll Write a Song for You.
All right, you just went to Never Everland on me, dude. Are you kidding me?
That's just another serendipity out of nowhere.
Well, there are no coincidences in life, man. I mean, that's the point. Is that? I'm sorry. He heard you play. You saying he was your neighbor, or how did he hear you even?
Yeah, he was my neighbor. We talked a bit, and I admired his stuff, and he learned some what I was doing, and it was fairly brief. It was, a matter of months, but it's weird that the little thing I was working on in G tuning. I was right at the time when my brother came out. Right after that, and then when I got back to L.A. working with Billy Preston, I got a call from Al McKay, the guitar player.
Sure.
On the album, and just weird stuff,
So, and you got you still receive publishing residuals, royalties from that.
Well, writer royalties, Al kept the publishing, but that's 50-50, publishing
Right.
and writing. And I can't think of the singer's name. Boy, at my age now, I'm losing names.
No, you're doing fantastic, dude. You're doing great. This was it Maurice White?
No, the guy that replaced somebody eventually, real high voice.
Yeah, no, it's not my bag.
I
So
got credit for writing the song.
I have to ask you because I interviewed this cat, Tim Moore. He's a great singer. He was up in Woodstock too. He was in a band called Gulliver, and then also wrote a lot of hit tunes for Hall and Oates. I mean, was Soul Survivor brought in as part of the white side of Sigma Sound or Philly International when you guys came in there?
The only white side. Yeah, we were the only white cat around, But they had the Gamble and Huff's first hit, Soul Survivors.
What was that?
Expressway to Your Heart, with the car horn and all that. That got Gamble and Huff on the map. So I guess that's why they.
That's your band. That was you and your brother.
No, we came in later after that. They managed to get Richie and Charlie Ingui, the singers, managed to get another record deal, and that's what we did afterwards. In '72, it was.
Oh, so I dig. So, just being somebody who just was a music fan. I mean, can you talk about? Not that you were trying to emulate them, but I just remember Buzzy. I mean, Buzz is in a class by himself, but he was talking about how funky a player John McLaughlin was. I was just curious about, not that you were trying to emulate them, but who were some of the jazz cats that you that you were inspired by, with Pat Martino from Philly or Kenny Burrell or Joe Pass? I mean, not that you were playing Dante's or in L.A. You weren't like Larry Carlton or those cats, but who were some of the jazz cats that you got off on?
Well, to be honest, I didn't pay a lot of attention. To me, it was above my head. I was just a simple rhythm and blues player.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't go check them out. You wouldn't go see a gig or anything like that. You were just not into that genre of music.
Yeah, I didn't go to see many other people. To me, going to see somebody play would be rare, because to me it's like going to work. So, I'd go see Taj Mahal. That was probably one of the few I would go see. Just
because of his storytelling, or talk a little bit about,
just because he's one bad mofo.
He absolutely. I've interviewed Taj. He's the baddest cat, and actually,
he had a guitar player that I really loved, and I learned a lot from Jesse Ed Davis. He'd play songs and only play on 2 strings, and it was so tasteful. He just did the most amazing guitar parts. It was a double album. The Old Folks at Home and something else. I forget the electric part of it. But Jesse Ed Davis was the guy that I learned the most from. Just tastefulness. Just, hold back and play just a little bit. And boy, was that cool. That just gave me goosebumps.
What's so cool? Well, I'm curious, did you, because you were far from the only person. I mean, I go back to the days of when I forget what his name originally was, but he was part of this band with Hadley Hawkinsmith and Bill Maxwell and these guys from Oklahoma City. Did you connect with Jesse Ed out in L.A. at all?
No, I think he had died by that point. I just listened to the album.
Sure.
Not much, I'm pretty much of a home guy.
I love Stephen Beckmeier. Dude. Give me a break. I mean, you weren't somebody who was going out and checking out the scene, but you were. Did any of the songs from Soul Survivor get any radio play?
Well, initially, but not really. Afterwards.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Once they saw your beautiful Hispanic faces, that you were gone.
Yeah, that was pretty much the end of it, and I split and went back to L.A. and really got into the business of it, recording.
Well, I kind of wanted to ask you, because my voice recorder's about to run out. Could we do set 2 this week?
Yeah, you can call me anytime.
Oh, I love you, man. Yeah, let's do it tomorrow around this. Does this time work tomorrow?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll do it because we got a lot more to get to. But now you kind of have a view inside the Jake Feinberg show. But it's really an honor to connect with you, man. I want to get into that Casablanca record that the Beckmeier brothers made too, which is just. I mean, your playing on that is also sublime on that.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I really do.
Well, listen, it's an honor. God bless Alvin Taylor, and I'll call you tomorrow around this time. We'll do it again.
All right, Jake.
Be cool, man. Later.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya.
Later.
What I'd say to younger players, especially, on guitar.
Sure.
The main guy to listen, even though I haven't heard any lead guitar in 30 years. It's just not on the radio. But if you want to learn, Albert King is the guy to listen to. You can hear his licks in Clapton and Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, all of them. But that's the guy to listen to.
Well, no, it's, and a guy that a lot of people don't really recognize this, but the other guy who was heavily influenced by Albert King was Jerry Garcia.
Yeah, I guess. I never listened much to him, but I kind of got off on my own thing. But...
No, totally. I mean, it was the British rocker. Explain why you think. Was it just a translatable blues style with some different kinds of runs through them? I mean, that's what David T. Walker told me in the interview. Was guys like Mel Brown and Albert King falls into that category. Is that they were blues players, but they were playing, you know, different stuff within those blues lines.
Yeah, I just think the British players were ahead of American taste. You know, the blues players just weren't very big in America, but the British players brought them out. But you talk about David T. Walker. I have an interesting story.
Oh, go ahead.
I got called in on a Johnny Halliday session.
Huh.
And they had used David T., but they wanted something different. So they got me, and I left them a cassette of some of my songs. I ended up getting a number one song in France, which I'm still collecting royalties.
What are you? Wait. So what tune is it?
It's the from the Beckmeier brothers, Rock and Roll Dancing.
Yeah, dude. Okay, so that was. I'm sorry. The session you were called in for was after you guys had already recorded the Beckmeier brothers album.
I think it was near that or right after it. It might. I don't know. It might have been afterwards. I gave them some other songs, a tape of stuff I'd been working on, and they used a couple of them on the album that I recorded. And then later, the French version of Rock and Roll Dancing. I can't pronounce the French title, but it was like a number one song there. And it was because of David T. Walker.
Wow, that is, I have to, Steve, it's so good to reconnect, man. I have to, I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I want you to talk when you came back to LA the second time and got entrenched in the studio. How quickly did you meet Wayne Henderson?
Oh, I knew Wayne from even before that with the group Side Effect. He produced some of their albums.
Well, no, I'm very at-home productions. You mentioned Masekela. Yeah. They had Chiza, that Chiza label. Now that was the Jazz Crusaders, but that Side Effect stuff was mid to later 70s, and I'm just wondering, like, the studio scene. Now again, I've interviewed Louis Shelton, Dean Parks. Wilton Felder, Lee Sklar, David Kemper. That scene, musician wise, was locked down. So when you got back out there after the Soul Survivors, how did you actually get embedded into the studio scene?
Through Side Effect, Augie Johnson. It was his band. And they'd been around since the early 70s. It was one of the first groups I worked with. And Fantasy Studios up in Berkeley. And Wayne Henderson was the producer.
Can you talk? Because Wayne and I did a cosmic interview probably 11 or 12 years ago. And, he was like, dude, your spirit supersedes who you even are as a person. He's referring to me. That dude, can you talk about his leadership style as a producer? ultimately, in the mid to late 70s, the efficiency model was just coming in. There still wasn't like a codified way to record an album. And I just wonder what his style was like as a producer when you would go in with Side Effect.
Well, he just put together the proper players and let them loose. That's the way to do it. And we all played it once. In fact, he got mad at me one time because usually solos and lead guitar parts are done as overdubs. But I got so anxious once on the basic track because it all bleeds into the drum mics and all of that. And he ended up using my solo. He couldn't really not use it. I got carried away and played a solo on the basic track. But, he was a cool guy, man. He was really good at what he did.
Were
Just
you?
put together the
Yeah. No, he was such a beautiful person. I mean, I have a buddy here in town. He's about your age, and he grew up in South Central, and he took to the saxophone at a young age, and Wayne was a Jehovah's Witness, and he would come and not I guess solicit, knock on doors, but he knocked on my dentist, Dr. Butch Diggs's door. And when he found out that he was a horn player, he took him under his wing and just talked to him about the entire racket. He's such in terms of like when you were out there, I know you weren't, going to Shelley's Manhole and places like that, but you didn't know the like Joe Sample and those guys the first time around. You didn't know the Jazz Crusaders or you didn't know those cats until you got back and started getting involved with Side Effect.
I actually did sessions with, not with Wayne, but Wilton Felder, and I forget what albums it was, but I did a number of sessions with a couple of the Crusaders. Joe Sample, I think, was on keyboard, and Wilton Felder played bass, I think, if my memory serves.
You're 100% right. I mean, Wilton Felder was the nastiest saxophone player, and then this bar owner, Harry Lieberman, I think his name was, gave him a bass, and within like 2 or 3 months, he was like one of the top call bass players, man.
Yeah.
Dude was ridiculous.
Yeah. My brother played bass, and he was one of my brother's favorites. Although he was a real big fan of James Jameson. That was the bass player.
Thank you for bringing that up. Because I remember, this is a great story. I don't know if you ever worked with Don Randy before.
No, I don't know who that is.
Well, he was the guy who basically ran the Baked Potato. A great piano player, incredible jazz player. Part of the Wrecking Crew, really, with Hal Blaine and those cats. But he, when Motown first moved out and kind of left a bunch of the cats in Detroit, some of the guys tried to go out and establish themselves in L.A. With Berry Gordy, with Motown out there, and Jamerson was out there, and on one of the first sessions Don Randy did with him, all of a sudden these guys came in with after the session these suitcases of cash to pay the players, and Don's like no, we don't do that here. You got to go. This is union scale, man. And Jamerson went up to him and gave him the biggest hug in the world and was like, "Thank you. I've been waiting for this to be above board on this shit." Like stop giving us cash, man. But and not that you were super close with him, but you did some session work with him, and I actually think that it's possible, and I can't remember exactly. We'll have to go back and look at the album, which album it was. Syreeta, maybe. One of these, you did one of the last sessions Jamerson ever played on.
I'm not sure. I don't remember doing any work with Jameson. James Jameson's son, Junior, I think, was on a session or two. But no, I never ran across James doing sessions.
Really? Okay, because that's interesting.
He kind of got blackballed somehow when they did that big TV reunion of all the Motown play. They didn't even invite him. He didn't play on the show. And his sound was the Motown sound. It was all about the damn bass,
110%. Pistol Allen and him, but one of the problems was he really had he had a huge alcohol problem when he went out there. He was kind of a mess. Oh. And, Steve, just being somebody who's just like very sublime. I mean, I listened back to the side 2 of Beckmeier Brothers, You Can Love, Rosie, How Could I Let You Leave Me, Crying Shame, All of Me. I mean, it's kind of like one of I just love this album now, obviously, and I mean, like when you worked on these Side Effect sessions with Wayne, or could have been. I mean, were there any like when you worked with Wilton and Joe, that you guys, can you just talk about how the session was recorded in the sense of were there any baffles? Was the drummer in a booth? I mean, to me, some of the magic of Sigma Sound, obviously Motown, small rooms, minimal baffles,
Yep.
everybody hitting at the same time, and I just wanted you to talk about in that '70s period. Um, and then everything was done kind of first, second take, and that was I just kind of wanted you to talk about the intimacy of the recording sessions at that time and how it
Yeah.
made.
Well,
Yeah.
the deal is we knew how to play. We didn't have to, the synthesizer do something that anybody could play.
That's right.
We just all got together and played. We did our stuff, and you could fit your part in. And, even if we had never played it before, just the idea we're all in the same room. And yeah, there'd be a little bit of baffling and the plastic in front of the drummer. But like I said with Wayne Henderson's session, you were supposed to wait to do overdubs, like solos, so it didn't bleed into the drums. But that's the way we did it.
I love that you took that solo, by the way. I'm sorry you got pissed off, but I love that you bled in. Can you talk about in your own, sort of bag or your own manifesto or doctrine? I believe that when I listen to anything really from the certain period of time that I love in the '60s and '70s. I mean, the thing that because there's something called good leakage or room sound. Ultimately, that's where the spirit.
Oh, yeah.
That's where the spirit.
Yeah, it's like the difference between a 33 and a third album and a CD.
Exactly.
The CDs cut off the high end, so they're saying, "Oh, we take the noise out." But what's really happening with a record is that those wavelengths go way up and bounce way back into the mix, and it gives it a warmth that's missing on CDs.
The hyper compression of CDs is it's all crunched together. So
it sounds sterile to me.
It's completely sterile, man. I mean, was that something that you noticed? Well, I just remember, I mean, when did you feel like there was a time in LA where, the studio scene, I mean, all of a sudden, I remember Ernie Watts saying that, he would go into a session in the early '80s and, Harvey Mason had his drum beats programmed into a chip. And they just run the drum track, and it lost all that intimacy. I just would love you to talk about how that affected you emotionally as a creative to see.
Oh, it was depressing. But starting in the late '80s, I guess it's just that all ended. In fact, a lot of guys like Willie Weeks and stuff went to Nashville to play with live players again, and they transformed country music into rock and roll. And I was still in L.A. My wife at the time did not want to move, so I found it depressing. So there wasn't a whole lot of work. The whole '80s things, with a few exceptions like Sting, there was really not it was the synthesizer era where everything, lead guitar went out the window, all of that. It was really, I don't know. I didn't like it, to be honest.
Well, what you're saying with synthesizers is that they were able to manufacture the sounds of other instruments with the synthesizer.
Yeah. I found a guy who was going to pay me to sample my guitar playing and then use that. Because even the synthesized guitar, you can't bend a string because it clicks up to the next half step. The guitar can't be synthesized so easily. He was going to record me all kinds of notes I'd play and whatnot, and then use that by combining. And I said, I ain't doing it.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you bring that up because Dean Parks said the same thing. He's like, I was not going to allow that to happen,
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of drummers went out of work. Other instruments went out of work. Guitar was one of the last things because they couldn't synthesize it.
And yeah, that's what Ernie was saying too with the saxophone. They couldn't do that with the sax either.
Yeah, right.
You know,
it started with guitar. The original rock and roll in the 50s started with guitar, and that was kind of the last to go. And now, since the 90s, I haven't heard anybody playing lead guitar. But music it's cyclical. It comes back. There's some old-fashioned R&B coming back. And for a young player, you had asked me what my advice would be.
Yeah.
And, the Albert King thing. But the main thing that I always went by was I considered myself good, even before I was. I mean,
yes.
I knew I wasn't, but I made myself think that. And, you can manifest things just by continuing to think. If you don't think about it, it'll pass you by. But if you're thinking about it, when the opportunity comes, it works out. It's like when I was 17, I first started playing guitar. I picked up a Beatles album. I think it was the Rubber Soul with the 4 faces on the front.
Sure.
Covered in shrink wrap. Okay? And in the shrink wrap, I could see my face with them. And I thought, man, I got to hook up with these guys. And years later, recording Billy Preston's album and then the Stair Steps, it was on Dark Horse Records, which was...
George Harrison's label.
Right.
Yeah.
I lose names.
That's all right. It's all right.
And when I finally got to London playing with Greenlawn, we went down in the bowels of underneath the dressing room, and it was crowded. And all of a sudden, this guy gave me a bear hug, and it turned out it was George Harrison because he had heard my playing on there. So that kind of, looking into the shrink wrap, it came true. I ended up hooking up with George Harrison.
Looking into the shrink wrap. This is profound. Hold on for a second. But you were that led to. Were you on 33 1/3?
No, Alvin was on there, and later Neil Larson got to play with it. Unfortunately, I played the same instrument as George. So I never got called for his albums.
That's right. Okay, so this was later once you do. Yeah, I got it before. It slips out of my mind. I got to ask you how this, because it seems to me to be possibly one of your first sessions in LA pre-Soul Survivor. I've just never heard of this broad, Renee Geyer.
Oh, yeah, that was one of the sessions I did. She's great, Australian chick. Really great. What a singer, and I'm surprised it didn't go anywhere, but a lot of people don't go anywhere, no matter how good they are, It's a different kind of payola system. I don't know. The good ones, 10% of anything is good. The rest is all BS, And the reason the BS sells is because 90% of people's taste is BS. It's frustrating thinking about it sometimes.
Right. I mean, I will tell you, just going back to what you were talking about before about the cyclical nature of music, I mean, part of it is modern recording techniques. I mean, when you mic every part of the drum kit and you don't allow the spirit or the room sound to move around during the recording, it is going to sound sterile. It's not going to have it's not going to have pulse, and it's going to have very quantized rhythm, obviously with drum machines. But I was just saying, Tucson, some of the lead guitar players that are here, are ridiculously great. I mean, the problem is there's still so many amazing, soulful musicians. Just it's a supply and demand issue. There's not enough gigs. Better than anybody. I don't know if you've ever played or been on a session with Danny Cooch Korchmar.
Yeah, I remember one session. We didn't kind of get along. He,
Yeah, you guys are kind of in the same territory, yeah.
Yeah, it was a matter of taste. When you play the wrong note and think it's cool, I just didn't get along with him. And he had an attitude like he was better than me. But I don't know. Yeah, maybe he's a nice guy. I just met him that one time.
Well, I don't, be that as it may. He just, I've written 5 books. I've done a few interviews with him, and some of our interviews wound up in my first volume of The Cats. And he talked about how music dictated culture in our society, especially when you were, mid to late 60s, concept albums, communal listening. And it really dictated the culture. And then all of a sudden, and now that's just not the case today. Music is listened to, it's listened to in isolation. Yeah.
The modern recording way, you lose the feedback amongst the musicians. And it changes you. You hear something the drummer does. Like Alvin, I would play rhythm guitar off his hi-hat. Because when he did a lick on the hi-hat, I would try to make that happen on guitar with the rhythm. You lose that connection that we used to have with everybody communally playing at the same time, and it's part of what has gotten lost. And, it's the modern culture. It's, to me, it just is a lower consciousness type of thing. And we ended up with Trump,
No, you're nailing it. The lower consciousness. It's a deadened consciousness. It's been deadened and dulled and numbed out, and that's music is now made really for pacification. So I just at this point, like, although you are, before the terrible hurricane, I just do you believe that? It gets a lot of press as a beautiful arts, haven town, and I know that there are some clubs there. Do you feel like there is? What is the vibe like in Asheville? What was the vibe like before the hurricane?
The original Players kind of thing. I see that coming back in the guys in between 30 and 40 years old.
Right.
I've listened to them and I've hung out. There's a band called Soul Blue, and I sit in with them once in a while.
Wow.
And, it's coming back. The old-fashioned clubs like the Orange Peel. I went there a couple of times, and it's just live music that has seemed to disappear. But, I'm pretty much a hermit, so I don't get out.
Well, no, but also it's like...
So I don't really know, but...
you know what it is? Now cats come, my friends will come into Asheville on tour, maybe have a couple night run. They don't even, they get a little bit of scratch for the gig, but they barely get paid for the gig itself. They have to get off the bandstand after the gig and sell merch. And that's how they get ahead. That's to me is that, I don't know if, one thing I wanted to ask you about was, could you talk about any Road Dogg experience that you had? I'm not sure if you had a chance to tour the Soul Survivor album, but did you ever actually go on the road and tour?
Well, with Pacific Gas and Electric and Greg Allman, we did tours, but I mainly was a studio guy. I don't know about selling merchandise and stuff, but it's sad that they have to do that because they're not getting paid.
No. What I'm saying is that before, like with PG&E, you're on Columbia, and the record company, for better or for worse, you didn't have to wear 8 hats as an artist. You could go out and play your music and get paid for the gig. You didn't have to worry about the merchandise. Some of the bigger acts, like in the early, when you were out with PG&E, Joni Mitchell could go out on a 40-city tour and lose money, and it didn't matter because they were making so much money because it was a commerce-based record industry. That early 70s PG&E, can you talk about some of those?
Alvin and I went out for 9 months, mostly in cars and, traveling around. And when I got back, I said, I ain't doing this. That's when I got into studio work. I could go home at night, But it was, and the money wasn't very good either, It was always the manager, what was his name? Cook. We called him Crook.
Right. Because he was always taking off the top, yeah.
Yeah, well, 1 week, oh, well, the IRS took the money, so blah, 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 you know. It was bare bones, I'll tell you that.
There's a couple cats. I looked up. I'm missing the inner sleeve on the Beckmeier brothers album, but it really touched my heart because there were two guys that played on the record, and I kind of wanted you to talk about both of them. I interviewed one of them. Beautiful cat. Was married to great singer Esra Mohawk. Was Daoud Shaw or David Shaw?
Oh, yeah.
When, how did you cross paths?
Cool.
Cool cat.
My brother Freddie likes certain drummers to play bass with. And, I got to know Ezra as well. But, he's cool. The other one that I really liked, the other drummer, was Richie Haywood.
Well, that's what I wanted to know. How the heck, when did your brother cross paths with Little Feat? I mean, how did that happen?
No, I knew him. And
you knew Richie?
I had met him. Yeah, we used to hang out. We didn't live far from each other in L.A., in the Valley. But I invited him to come play. He played on the 2 demos that got us a record deal. Rock and Roll Dancing and a song called Flybird.
Wow, those are on side 1. I haven't even really vetted that. So wait, you
the demos went right onto the album.
Can you talk about, you listen to like Waiting for Columbus, a double live album from Little Feat, him and Kenny Gradney cooking it, and he has the most unpredictable style. I remember Fred Tackett told me, and we've done a bunch of interviews, and he just said that, it would drive Lowell George insane because he would work on these certain specific parts for Richie, and he'd lock him down, and then the minute they'd hit the record button, he was playing his own thing. You couldn't get him. Can you just talk about his style and why, why he was even though he was unorthodox, why he was really a great player, not just for your brother, but he was in a band called Fraternity of Man with Elliot Igber. And he's going
I don't know that.
Yeah, that's going back like a little. Yeah, that's an album I picked. But Richie was everywhere, man. Like I would. What was it? Can you just describe his style?
Well, he had a very light touch, is what I remember from it. Unlike Alvin, who has got a heavy touch.
Heavy.
It was more like jazz drums. He was freelance, but he ended up playing well on our sessions. So, that's about I visited him a few times and used him on the demos, but that's it. I don't know much more about him. He was a nice guy, and I think he died in a motorcycle accident. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he had some kind of blood cancer. I don't know. He definitely passed.
Oh, okay.
He passed away, but he was.
He did have a motorcycle accident previous to that, but
right. Going back to Woodstock,
nice
you never ran into like the band Levon Helmer, those cats, did you?
No. Even though I was in Woodstock, I did not. They probably weren't there at the same time, but they were there before I was.
That's right. Can you talk about how important your brother has been to you in your musical existence? You said, and maybe it was tongue-in-cheek, but you said, Freddie came out and he rescued me from L.A.
Right.
But just in general, he's your older brother?
No, he was 2 years younger.
He's younger.
He died a few years. Yeah, he died a few years ago. He too had cancer of some sort.
Well, I don't want to leave.
Influence on me was basically when I would write a song, I would hear his bass playing. And then that worked for him because it worked right into what I was writing. But that was his influence on me, other than just being my brother. But he had that bouncy Jameson feel.
He is such a. What was his like? Were you able to? He was obviously he dropped out of high school, joined Butterfield, but primarily, what was his was he doing while you were out in LA? Like, was he working? Was he doing studio work in Philly, or was he on the road? What was he doing?
I have no idea. I never asked him, and in the early years I was in California, he was on the East Coast. I do not know what he was up to. I know he was hooked up with the Soul Survivors here and there, but
Right.
other than that, no, we never even got together till he came out to California. I brought him out, you know.
What was the what was the concept? Yeah, because the recording was the Beckmeier Brothers was done at Indigo Sound. Was that right?
But that was the studio, Indigo Ranch.
Indigo Ranch. I feel like I've was that a popular recording studio?
I'm not too sure. Trying to think who else recorded there, but it's a beautiful place up in the hills overlooking the ocean, and it was just a nice place to be. It was comfortable.
It sounds beautiful.
I mean, did too many other people did.
I feel like it's kind of like one of these albums that, you know, if you look it up on YouTube Music, obviously the rock and roll dancing is the only track that's even available.
I know. It used to have also You Can Love, which is my favorite one.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, this side B, You Can Love, man, that I keep listening to that every night, man. I'm cooking dinner for my kids, just throwing this Beckmeier Brothers. I'm like, this is the greatest album of the year for me, dude.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I did like my guitar solo on that.
Dude, you were ripping on that. Ripping. It's like volcanic, man.
Well, I appreciate it.
What is, if you could how many brothers do you have?
Just Brother Fred.
Just Brother Fred. It just seems, it seems like, you know, do you feel like he, I mean, are you able to still sort of communicate with him in some ways? Does he come visit you once in a while? Do you talk to him?
We kind of, other than the Soul Survivors, and then when I got him out to L.A., we played with Greg Allman on the album that I cut. And no, we weren't exactly close. Let's put it that way.
I dig. Yeah. No, I even meant posthumously, like, you know, does he come visit you as a spirit? Do you communicate it?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I dream with too. He was great with woodworking and building furniture.
Wow. And
I had this dream of there was a missing railing on the stairs. And I remember not long after he died, I said to myself in the dream, "Oh, well, don't worry about it. Freddie can fix that." and in the dream, I actually started crying, but only in the dream.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about, like, obviously it's good to be, you're in a good, well, you were, I mean, who knew that this natural disaster was going to come through, but what still inspires Steve Beckmeier today? To me, like, you know, we can sit here and it's easy for me I'm 46, you know, I mean, I knock on wood, I'm going to be here for a minute. And I got a lot more chapters left to write, but I also realized that for my parents' generation, your generation, I don't know what I would feel like if this was going into this new sort of dystopic time of ignorance and know-nothingness and lies and disinformation and people lapping it up and saying,
George
like,
Orwell.
That's right. You know, I mean, so
truth.
You know, but for me, it's
Truth Central, right? It's for Trump.
It's straight out of 1984.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, like, you know, because we can sit here and stew or, you know, be resentful, but once that creeps in, I mean, that creates dis-ease. And I wonder what you do. It doesn't have to be music, but what do you do to sort of get out of your own way and find some peace during the day?
Yeah, well, I have a hobby of Avalon Hill war games. I recreate the Battle of Stalingrad, and I put my mind to that, so I don't think about it.
Holy cow, dude! You just went to Never Ever Land right there.
Yeah, hundreds of pieces and trying to recreate history. That relaxes me. But we had a disaster. I mean, the pandemic, everything kind of slowed down from 20 on till now with this storm we had. It's just, I've been indoors most of the time.
Totally.
I don't even want to go out there, When I discovered, 52, 53% of white women voted for Trump, it's like, wait a minute. These women voting against their own interests? What's going on here, And it's like George Carlin, my favorite comedian, says, ignorant people elect ignorant leaders. And I see it as the fall of Rome.
Well, we're going to find out pretty quickly, and either that incompetence is going to lead to the fall of Rome, or it's going to usher in the age of Aquarius after 4 really difficult years. Although,
well, yeah, I hope so.
Well, I just don't see how you're going to actually. The miracle was that he left the White House the first time, and I don't think he's ever leaving again. I just don't see it.
Well, it might work out that way, and it might work out. Let's hope not. But there's no safety to it. He'll just appoint all the yes men he wants all over the place.
Steve Beckmeier. I mean, by the way, this cat David Kalish, is he still with us?
Oh yeah, he's out in L.A. somewhere.
Because he played on the Beckmeier Brothers album.
Yeah, he played the slide guitar parts.
Right. And
yeah, he's very good. He's a good player. Met him and Steve
Berlin
in Philadelphia when I was with the Soul Survivors. Brought both guys out to join the Beckmeier brothers that we were putting together. And Steve Berlin had a very unique setup. He played soprano sax, and it was with a pickup into a guitar amp. And it had a very guitar-like sound. So I was digging that, playing, along with that. We could do parts together and stuff. He was really unique as a player. He ended up with
Los Lobos, yeah.
Yeah, Los Lobos.
No, I couldn't believe, because that must have been like his first gig, maybe, was the
pretty much. He had a band in Philly, Skyline, I think they were called. But, they were just looking for a way to get to the center of activity in L.A.,
It's funny, I interviewed this cat who was actually became Greg, it was Greg Allman and Friends in the 90s. He became his musical director, Tommy Thompson. And he talked about kind of being the verbal communicator for Greg, because Greg just wasn't a talker. He didn't really know how to communicate his ideas. And he would often find a muse to do that for him. And I just wonder, was that your role too?
Yeah, kind of. Greg and I got along. In fact, before he died, he told me that I was one of his 5 favorite guitar players.
Whoa.
Along with his brother and Buzzy. And I don't know who the other 2 are. Maybe...
I bet one of them was Tommy Talton from the Cowboy.
It might be.
Yeah.
I don't know. You never mentioned anybody else, just those 3 names.
He put it. Was it in a book or something?
No, that was not in his book. That book came out before he told me that on the phone.
Oh, he told you on the phone. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I was kind of grateful.
And those tours must have been a little bit more highbrow than driving around with PG&E for.
Oh yeah, much better. The only drag was, maybe I shouldn't say it, but Cher was with the tour.
Drama needle, dude.
We'd play a place in Germany or something, and the crowd was like, you'd see the hippies come to see Greg, and then the Blue Rinse crowd that watched Cher on TV, they were there. It was the weirdest mix of people.
You know what? I don't think who cares? They were paying for tickets, dude. I mean,
yeah. But it was just, I noticed it was the strangest crowd I'd ever played in front of,
Well, listen, Brother Beckmeier, I'm going to let this marinate for a little while, but I'd love to do a set three with you in 25, and I'm so humbled and grateful. So much of my show has revolved around vinyl and records, and then reaching into the records and finding cats. Now over 2,000 of them. And
Wow.
this is one of my favorite interviews.
I really appreciate the fact that you're doing this, giving some visibility to the guys behind the scene, because they're probably more important than, or as important as the artists themselves.
Well, I mean, and the good leaders that I've interviewed, Merle Haggard and Tony Orlando and freaking Ted Nugent, and I mean all these cats. Taj. I mean, most of those cats get that. Maybe the people that write about it, they care about the figurehead, the leader. But without the accompanists, there is no music. Without the session,
we were lucky to get our names written on the album cover.
Well, that's the. I mean, that changed. Yeah, Bones Howe did a lot of that. I mean, he helped, because for a long time it was the only albums that had the personnel were jazz records, and then with Peter Asher and some of those cats, they started to advocate for that Kunkel, Sklar, Craig Durgy kind of stuff. And finally, you guys, I assume that the inner sleeve of the Beckmeier album has the accompanist, because there's nothing on the back.
I think there's lyrics on one side, and then a picture of me and my brother when we were like 10 and 8 years old.
Oh my God, I need that.
Yeah, there's a sleeve on the inside. I don't know.
No, the record I found came into a place I was working at last year, and it was just a straight record in the cover. There was no inner sleeve.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I
wish I knew how to get those songs. They had 3 of our songs, Beckmeier Brothers, and 2 of them disappeared and left only Rock and Roll Dancing. I don't know how to get stuff onto YouTube. I have no clue.
Well, I do. I mean, first of all, we should talk about this, because one of the ways I've been, it took me about 10 years to actually start making any money on my show. I'm 13 years in now. We'll be 14 in January. And my YouTube channel is now absolutely exponentially growing, and it's really would be very, very easy for me. Do you have a YouTube channel or no?
Well, I go in now. I just go on the computer.
Well, what I'm saying is that I can have an engineer in town here in Tucson rip the record down to MP3 files. And then I can upload that the entire album. Each individual track I can upload, or the ones you think are killer, I can upload it to my channel.
Yeah, there's at least 2 or 3 that I think should be on there as representative.
All right, so listen.
Love and Flybird.
Which ones do you think are represent? Flybird. I mean, rock and roll's already out there, right? You Can Love.
Yeah, You Can Love and Flybird. And I can't remember the rest of it.
All right, I'm going to read off these. I'm going to read these names off, and I'm going to get to work on this.
Okay.
We got Snakes in the Grass. That's what I like about my.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's what I like about my baby. But the side two, this is where it's at. You Can Love, Rosie. How Could I Let You Leave Me? Crying Shame, All of Me.
Yeah, Crying Shame, and it should be on there, because that's also on Greg Allman's album.
He recorded that song?
Yeah, Playing Up a Storm album.
That is so...
Yeah, I wrote a song, and he liked my song, so we put it on the album. And Dr. John's playing on certain things, and Neil Larson keyboard part. It's mostly a keyboard song. There is guitar in it, but... And if you want to hear some of my simplest, best rhythm, Neil Larson's song Matthew's Arrival is on that album as well. And there's some smoking rhythm parts on that. Yeah.
Well, no, just for this, I'm looking at Flybird, You Can Love, and Crying Shame.
Yeah, at least.
All right, well, we'll start with those 3. I'll keep you updated on it. But yeah, I actually find it to be somewhat cool that there is no exposure for this album. Now there's an opportunity to get it some exposure and put it on a channel where, I've put up a lot of eclectic. Before I let you go, there was this band, that I put up a couple of their tracks because they made an album that I think Robin Williams and a bunch of actors put some money into, and the record label collapsed. It was called Fun Zone, and the band was Michael Rubenstein, it was Arthur Rubenstein's son, Tim McIntyre, who was an actor but could sing like Jim Morrison, Ben Benet, I don't know if you know his story,
No.
Wolfgang Melz, Jock Ellis. I mean, this is like one of the nastiest studio bands. It was like 1976 it came out. Don Poncher was on drums. And so I have some of their tracks up, and now the Beckmeier brothers are going to get up there too, man. So and I'll keep you updated on it, and maybe.
All right. Hey, there's one track I'd like you to listen to from Side Effect. It was pretty much their only song that they got a lot of airplay on. It's called SOS.
Yeah.
And I did like 3 guitar overdubs on that, but the song is great. The singer is incredible.
I will definitely do it. Well, let's just stay in touch, man. I hope you have a beautiful holiday season, man, and it is such an honor. God bless Alvin Taylor. Thanks for being part of the show, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Well, I'll text you a link to this where you can listen to it once it goes up online, because this will get all over the place and people are going to love it.
All right. Great.
All right. Be cool, man. Be safe, and much love to you, brother.
All right, my friend. I'm glad to have met you.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
All right.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.